Om Sarashavasamarampham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmaracharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Good. Be seated, please. Om Parameshvara. Okay, you need to press wide. All right. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahai Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good. Welcome back. Let me turn this fan on. We are continuing our overview of the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. And this arguably is the most important part of our entire study because it empowers you in future years to be familiar enough with the Bhagavad Gita that you can find your way through and find certain parts that you'd like to study again. So we will begin this class, though, with the first half of the Gita Dhyanam, and then we will continue with our overview. We'll need the PowerPoint. There we go. And we'll begin. As always, as I'm chanting, glance at the translation, and then with the translation in mind, repeat after me. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam. Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina. Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam. Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamrita Varshanim Bhagavatim. Advaitamrita Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayanim. Ashtadashadhyayanim Ambatva Manusandadhami. Ambatva Manusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshanim. Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshanim. Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhi. Namostute Vyasa Vishala Pullaravindayata Patra Netra. Pullaravindayata Patra Netra. Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha. Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha. Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha. Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha. Prapanna Parijataya. Prapanna Parijataya. Totra Vetraika Panaye. Totra Vetraika Panaye. Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya. Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya. Gitamrita duhe namaha. Gitamrita duhe namaha. Sarvopanishado gavo. Sarvopanishado Dogda Gopala Nandanaha, Dogda Gopala Nandanaha, Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta, Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta, Dugdham Gitamritam Mahata, Dugdham Gitamritam Mahata. Together. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. That's the first half. We'll do the second half in our next class. We will proceed with our overview. Let me just check. We're recording properly? Okay. And I forgot to welcome all of you and welcome everyone who's watching online as we continue our overview of the Bhagavad Gita. We had in our previous class gone through much of Chapter 3, Karma Yoga. And without question, Karma 3 is a predominant topic throughout the Bhagavad Gita, so we're going to be seeing a lot of it in Chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, and as I've said, it comes back again in Chapter 18. Where we left off is a very dramatic part of the Bhagavad Gita. And let me put my chair to the side, and we will continue. Remember, we're using these English verses. We chant them the same as the English. I think it's helpful if the first verse you listen and repeat, and then the remaining verses we'll chant together. Listen and repeat, please. Arjuna Uvacha, Arjuna Uvacha. What happened to English? Sorry. I don't know, it's all the same. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is it that drives? O Krishna, what is it that drives some people to commit a sin? Some people to commit a sin, even against their own desires, even against their own desires, compelled as if coerced by force, compelled as if coerced and together. The Blessed Lord said, it is desire, it is rage, ravenous and malevolent, born of passionate tendencies. Know this to be your enemy. Krishna makes it so clear that there are, look at Arjuna's question, compelled, compulsions. What compulsions have we been talking about? Mr. Raga and Mr. Dvesha. Here, they're called Kama and Krodha. Kama, desire. Krodha, anger. You can take anger as that Dvesha. Or there's an alternate interpretation that Sri Shankaracharya gives. So Kama is Mr. Raga, we'll call it, or Mr. Raga and Dvesha. Krodha is the son of Mr. Raga and Dvesha, because as Shankara explains, that when you have a raga or dvesha that is obstructed, an obstructed desire of any kind gives rise to anger. But nicely, that word compelled comes here. As we said, raga and dvesha are not likes and dislikes. They are compulsions, inner compulsions. And they're a huge problem. We'll see that. We'll chant together. Even the wisdom of the wise is eclipsed by this enemy, a raging foe, intense desire, unquenchable like burning fire. Therefore, Arjuna, from the start, all your senses must you restrain. Destroy this demon of desire that robs you of your wisdom's power. And that concludes chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Chapter 4 is next, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. What a long title. Jnana Karma Sannyasa, renunciation of karma. Here, renunciation of karma through jnana. This is a huge topic that actually was touched on in chapter 3. We'll continue, it's 4 and 5. When we discuss this, it's essential to navigate this material. It's essential to know that Sri Krishna is talking about 5 different kinds of renunciation. No wonder people get confused. We have to discern 5 kinds of karma sannyasa. I'll show you on the board. 2 kinds of karma sannyasa and 3 kinds of jnana sannyasa. And here you'll need to push, listen carefully. You're going to push the cam and then push the board. And then that should work perfectly. All right. Cam and board. All right. So, karma sannyasa simply means renunciation. And here we're going to find 2 kinds of karma sannyasa, 3 kinds of jnana karma sannyasa, that is karma sannyasa by means of knowledge. So the first two are easy. First one is just to remain inactive. Don't do anything, just sit. That's karma sannyasa. Just sit. Somebody asks you, get up and do something. You just sit. That's karma sannyasa. Not a good idea. The second kind is a good idea only for some people like me, which is by means of a ritual, you take to a life. In fact, let me call that lifestyles. I like to call this lifestyle sannyasa. Lifestyle. I have to get used to this. All right. So lifestyle sannyasa, you undergo some rituals, you renounce your worldly responsibilities. Along with those responsibilities you renounce, I put rituals up here before, because in a technical sense, you renounce those Vedic rituals that were done in ancient times. So all of that is renounced. Now, these are kind of obvious. Sitting and doing nothing is obviously renunciation of karma. And becoming a sannyasi is another common kind of karma sannyasa. But the other 3 are jnana karma sannyasa. That means karma sannyasa by means of knowledge. And what are those 3? The first one is... And the first one is basic in karma yoga. Karma yoga in this sense. When you recognize that your worldly activities will not lead you to perfect contentment, you then renounce your personal agenda to pursue raga and avoid dvesha, pursue the things you want and avoid the things you don't want, and instead you follow dharma. So what you're actually renouncing here is you're renouncing your own agenda. It's a nice way of putting it. My guru liked that word. You renounce your agenda. I want to get what I want. And how can you renounce that agenda? Only with jnana. In particular, the understanding that your agenda, your conventional agenda, will never lead to perfect contentment. With that knowledge, you renounce agenda. There's another kind of jnana, karma, sannyasa. By the way, if you think this is complicated, it is. I remember as a young student, I remember complaining to a fellow student. I said, Brahma jnana is simple compared to karma yoga. Because Brahma jnana, all you have to know is Brahman is one, Brahman is all. There are no parts, there are no details whatsoever. There's a lot of pieces, so to speak, to this puzzle. So the second kind of jnana, karma, sannyasa is you renounce the phala. Now, this can be interpreted in many ways, but here in this context, it means when you get it, that you can only perform actions, you cannot produce results. Right? Karmanyevadhikaraste, that famous verse, that's what it says. You can only perform actions, you cannot produce results. So the second kind of jnana, karma, sannyasa is to look upon Ishvara as karma phala datta. That's also knowledge. It's a different kind of knowledge. First of all, there's a knowledge of the insufficiency of worldly efforts, leading you to renounce your agenda. Then there's a knowledge that Ishvara is karma phala datta. The fruits of the results are not in your hands. So through that knowledge, there's a second kind of jnana, karma, sannyasa. And then there's one more kind, believe it or not, one more kind of jnana, karma, sannyasa, very different than the prior two. Why is that? When you realize that your true nature is unchanging consciousness, Satchidananda Atma, what exactly can Satchidananda do? What can unchanging consciousness do? Can it drive a car? Unchanging consciousness can't drive a car. Unchanging consciousness can't do anything. And that's your true nature. That is a knowledge that makes you enlightened. To discover your true nature as Satchidananda Atma, unchanging consciousness, that is enlightenment. With that enlightenment comes one more kind of jnana, karma, sannyasa, and that is renunciation of kartritva, doership. When you renounce the notion that I am an agent of action, and that notion is renounced through knowledge. So clearly it is another kind of jnana, karma, sannyasa. But one last point here, and some more details. 3 and 4 are clearly karma yoga. Number 5 is not karma yoga because you're enlightened. Karma yoga is a practice, and enlightenment is the result of that practice. So, if you have this, and it is complicated, what can I say? But if you have this list in mind, when you study chapters 3, 4, and 5, they'll make sense. Without this structure, 3, 4, and 5 can be quite confusing because Sri Krishna and Arjuna, they switch between these 5. At the beginning of chapter 5, Arjuna is going to ask, why do you tell me to take to a life of sannyasa, lifestyle? Then Sri Krishna says, no, that's not what I meant. What I meant was this kind of renunciation, the renunciation of karma yoga. Anyway, you'll see that it's really helpful to understand these 3. Now you want to hit close-up and PowerPoint. There we go. Excellent. All right. So now, is that switch off, the fan switch? I just heard a fan turn on. There it is, off. Yeah, thank you. It goes down. That's it. Thank you. All right. So, with that in mind, now we understand the title of the chapter, Jnana Karma Sannyasa, and now we'll go through one more level of confusion. The chapter doesn't begin with that topic at all. Sri Krishna begins with a completely unrelated topic, a topic about how these teachings came about in the first place. Remember that these topics, in fact, even how to put this, the chapter boundaries are conventional. In other words, any edition of the Mahabharata has the same chapter boundaries. But the chapters of the Mahabharata in general don't have titles. Books have titles, but the chapters, there are 18 books of the Mahabharata. Each book has a title. Each chapter does not have a title. There are 18 books, but there are just almost 2,000 chapters. We don't have 2,000 titles, except for the Bhagavad Gita. We have 18 titles. These titles have been added by later scholars. And here, Jnana Karma Sannyasa refers to the main topic of the chapter, not the first topic of the chapter. The first topic is probably well known. In fact, well known for 3 verses made famous by B.R. Chopra in his Hindi Mahabharata. You'll recognize those verses when they come. Okay, we'll just recite this together. It's quite straightforward. The Blessed Lord said, "This yoga I did first impart to the Sun God so long ago. He passed it on to Manu then. To Ikshwaku did it descend. Through these teachers, this lineage, the royal sages came to know. But after many eras passed, it appeared lost, O Arjuna. Since you are my devoted friend, today I shall declare to you this ancient wisdom, yogic truth, the greatest secret of them all." Arjuna said, "But your birth here upon this land came later than the sun's first dawn. How then am I to understand that you taught at the very start?" The Blessed Lord said, "Many births I have had before, as you have too, O Arjuna. Each of my births I know quite well, but of your births you do not know. I am unchanging and unborn, Lord of all creatures, thus am I, holding nature in my control. By my power I took this form. Whenever dharma wanes away in the rise of unrighteousness, O Arjuna, I then return, incarnating myself again to protect good people from harm, to destroy all the wicked ones, to re-establish dharma here. I am born in age after age. Just a quick comment here about avatara. When Sri Krishna, when Narayana, Vishnu in this case, takes a form and appears in this realm, there's a lot to be said about avatara vada is a term used, but just one important distinction we can make, difference between an avatara and you and me, because according to Sri Krishna, you and I have inside of us Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna also has inside of him Sri Krishna. So what's the difference? There's Sri Krishna in this form, in all of these forms, and there's Sri Krishna in this godly form. What is the difference? The main difference is how these incarnations came about. Your incarnation and my incarnation came about due to our individual karma. Your karma, my karma. That karma led us to be born. Birth is due to karma. Even Sri Krishna's birth is due to karma, but not his individual karma. We have a term, samashti karma, the karma of everyone. And here's the idea. When everyone is suffering, and that suffering drives everyone to pray, and those prayers produce a tremendous amount of punya karma, good karmas, those good karmas can culminate in the descent. Avatara literally means descent. The descent of Ishvara in some form. So even that form of Krishna is born of karma, not his personal karma, our karma. And if you wonder, people ask, Swamiji, why hasn't another avatara come? And the reason is things aren't bad enough yet. When things get bad enough, then we'll pray more, and perhaps then our prayers can produce another avatara. Now Sri Krishna is going to, next topic really, he's going to discuss the importance of knowledge of him. And knowledge of him is complex because it's not knowledge of Sri Krishna, who is Arjuna's charioteer, and it's not even Sri Krishna as an avatara. It includes Sri Krishna as an avatara, but knowledge of Krishna is much more. Knowledge of Krishna is knowledge of Ishvara, God of the cosmos, knowledge of reality, knowledge of Brahman, spiritual knowledge, ultimately enlightenment. And this is where the text goes next. Together. Those who know the reality of my birth and my deeds divine, when their bodies are cast aside, not reborn, they shall come to me. Those free from anger, greed, and fear, purified by this wisdom's power, devoted to me totally. Many such reach my state supreme. And I'm going to pause here because now we have the next section of the text in which he introduces this jnana karma sannyasa. So the topic of the chapter really doesn't begin until verse 16, and you will see how he's referring to jnana karma sannyasa due to knowledge. What kind of knowledge? We saw 3 different levels. Knowledge of the insufficiency of karma to produce perfect peace and contentment, one kind of knowledge. Knowledge that Ishvara is the karma paladatta. You don't produce the karma, you don't produce the pala, Ishvara does. That's the second kind of knowledge. And what was the third kind of knowledge? Enlightenment, knowledge that you don't do anything at all. You are Satchidananda Atma, and Atma is changeless. Atma doesn't engage in activities. You'll see references to all 3 of these forms of jnana, karma, sannyasa in the coming verses. And we continue. What is action and its reverse? Even the sages this confused. As to karma I shall explain, through which you will be freed from sin. Those who perform their every deed without desire for the fruits, by the fire of knowledge cleansed, all the sages declare them wise, free from attachment to results, always satisfied, self-content, even when they engage in work. Truly they labor not at all, satisfied with whatever comes, free from envy and prejudice, unchanged in failure and success. By karma they are never bound. They offer fruits their works have reaped, as a sacrifice to the Lord, resolved in wisdom unattached. All their karmas will fade away. And we'll pause here. There's some symbolism here which may be a little bit obscure. When you, and by the way, we're talking about number 3 on the board if you're interested. When you recognize that your efforts, your worldly efforts, will not lead to perfect contentment, but you do simultaneously understand that instead of fulfilling your own agenda, you're better off by following Dharma. Rejecting your own agenda and following Dharma puts you on a spiritual path which can lead you then to perfect peace and contentment. So there's a kind of sacrifice going on here. You sacrifice your own agenda. Those of you who are parents know this better than me, what it is to sacrifice your agenda. There are many things you want to do, but the children come first. So here, there are many things you want to do, but Bhagavan comes first. This is a kind of sacrifice which is then compared to a yajna in ancient times, offering into a sacred fire was that kind of sacrifice. So offering your agenda is represented by making offerings into a sacrificial fire. That's some of the symbolism here. Various kinds of offering. We'll see that. Let's see, we saw that. The second verse here. Some pour oblations into fire, others sacrifice to the gods, some offer their sense faculties into the fire of self-restraint, some bear penance as sacrifice, others do yogic exercise or Vedic chanting study too, or the practice of breath control. Those who partake in sacrifice realize Brahman, eternal God. But those who offer not at all gain nothing here or hereafter. Knowledge is better, has a right, than material offerings, because such wisdom is the goal to which all offerings will lead. For this knowledge you should inquire, with humble heart prepared to serve. Those who know, perceivers of truth, will impart their wisdom to you. Even if you happen to be the worst of sinners in the world, this knowledge, like a floating raft, will carry you across all sin, just as a blazing fire destroys, reducing heaps of wood to ash. So in the fire of knowledge too, all karmas are completely burned. Is that the end of the chapter? No. Okay. More symbolism here. How does knowledge destroy karmas? How can knowledge set you free from karma? There's two aspects to this, and this is really not well understood. So just very briefly, since it's a topic that's not well understood. First of all, knowledge as enlightenment removes your sense of being an agent of action. Then, as Sri Krishna says, you don't do anything at all. You have an inner sense that your past karmas and the situation around you is determining your behavior. Your behavior is not driven at all by an agenda. Your behavior is driven by the requirements of the situation. You find yourself observing your actions instead of willfully performing those actions, pursuing your agenda. So that's one way in which you become free from karma, because karmas that are not willfully done produce no karma, produce no phala. I'll say this again. This is something about the doctrine of karma that's misunderstood. Actions that are not done willfully have no karmic consequences. And the example you might remember is if you accidentally step on a bug, no problem. But if a bug is crawling around and you smash that thing, there'll be a small papa karma for killing that bug. That one was intentional. The one you accidentally stepped on was not intentional. So in this way, this knowledge of enlightenment transforms all your actions in such a way where they have no more karmic consequences. There's another way. Many scriptures, including what Sri Krishna says right here, the fire of knowledge burns karmas, and in a second sense, many of you know that according to the doctrine of karma, you have an infinite amount of sanchita karma, accumulated karmas, from an infinite number of prior births. And the idea is, in order to exhaust that infinite amount of karma, you will have to take an infinite number of future births to exhaust it. That doesn't sound very hopeful, so Sri Krishna assures you here that gaining enlightenment destroys those accumulated karmas. He uses a metaphor, just as fire burns wood, this fire of knowledge burns away, so to speak, those accumulated karmas, so you will not be reborn. Imagine working so diligently to become enlightened in this lifetime. You've been meditating and praying and studying Bhagavad Gita, and you get there. You become enlightened. You are free from karma in this life, and then you pass away peacefully, and then you're born into another miserable situation, and you have to go through it all over again. Fortunately, that doesn't happen. And you have Sri Krishna's assurance here. All those past karmas are burnt away in the Jnana Agni, the fire of knowledge. And that's what he talks about here. In the world nothing else exists that purifies as knowledge can. Such knowledge one with faith can gain, and soon attain to peace supreme. Therefore the sword of knowledge wield, sever the doubts within your heart. Follow this yoga faithfully, arise and fight, O Arjuna. Last line puts it back in context, right? This is a message given to Arjuna on that battlefield. And Sri Krishna is waiting for these teachings to kick in, so to speak. Arjuna is still seated on the chariot seat, and his head is down. He's still depressed. He's still upset. He's not yet ready to fight. Fortunately, by the end of chapter 18, Arjuna says, okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready to do what you tell me to do. That concludes chapter 4, Jnana Karma Sannyasa. Next chapter is Sannyasa, Sannyasa Yoga. And Sannyasa here refers to the trick question. Which one of the 5 kinds of sannyasa do you think Sri Krishna is talking about? I warned you it's a trick question because the answer is all of them. We have to be ready for that. So sannyasa, words have so many meanings in different contexts. We have to be ready for that. And you'll find that throughout this chapter, whenever the word sannyasa is used, you have to pay attention to the context so that you get the proper meaning. For example, in the very first verse, Arjuna says, you praised renunciation first, and then you praise karma yoga. This is almost a repeat of what he complained in chapter 3. He's still stuck on... People keep asking the same questions. Have you noticed that? Even Arjuna is asking the same question again and again because Arjuna didn't completely get it. And that is, earlier, when Sri Krishna was talking about sannyasa, he was not talking about, he was talking about several of these 5, but Arjuna very narrowly focuses on one of them. Number 2 on the board, which means taking to the lifestyle of a sannyasi. So remember, Arjuna's dilemma continues to be fight or flight. But for Arjuna, flight in his mind means taking to a life of sannyasa. He's not just going to run away from the battlefield, but he says it would be better to live a life of alms. He's ready to become a sannyasi and devote himself to spiritual growth. That's not what Sri Krishna told him to do. Sri Krishna told him, fulfill your duties. Arjuna still doesn't quite get it, so this question comes one more time. Let's see how the chapter begins. Arjuna said, you praised renunciation first, then karma yoga you extol. Which is the better of these 2? O Krishna, tell me what is best. The blessed Lord said, yoga and renunciation both can lead to the supreme goal, but of the two, the best for you is karma yoga's active path, renouncing all for wisdom's sake. The same is gained through yoga too. Following either properly, one can obtain the fruits of both. The renounced life is difficult if yoga is not practiced. Yoga, karma yoga, right? Through yoga, one is purified, mastering one's senses and mind, knowers of truth. And I'll stop here because there's a twist that just came. So back here, the renounced life, just to show how deftly all 5 meanings, actually the first meaning is pretty much not included, but the others. The renounced life is difficult, meaning lifestyle, sannyasa, is difficult until you've practiced karma yoga first, because it's through the practice of karma yoga that you become free from an agenda, you become free from raga and dvesha. You can imagine if you renounce the world and go and sit in that cave, bringing with you all of your raga and dveshas. How would that be? At least living in New Jersey, you have an opportunity to fulfill some of those ragas and dveshas. Living in a cave, you'll be miserable. So that's the point here, that prior to taking to lifestyle sannyasa, the performance of karma yoga preparation is essential. Then he very suddenly flips to the 5th kind of sannyasa. You see, this is what we have to be alert to, because in the 5th kind of sannyasa, you renounce doership. You recognize that your true nature is unchanging consciousness. Unchanging consciousness, as we joked before, doesn't drive cars, doesn't cook lunch, doesn't do anything. And when you recognize that I am that unchanging consciousness, with that knowledge, with enlightenment, you renounce, so to speak, your sense of agency, doership, kartartva. And that's what's the next topic here. Knowers of truth will think like this: I don't do anything at all, even while seeing or touching, eating, walking, or talking too, giving up yearning for the fruits, knowing all works depend on God, they remain untainted by sin, which falls like dew from lotus leaves. Look, just so much in these verses. Giving up yearning for the fruits. Number 3, giving up your agenda, recognizing that it won't lead to perfect peace and contentment. Then knowing all works depend on God. Number 4, knowing that Ishvara is karma pala-datta. You don't produce the results. You can see how all of those 5 are woven in this chapter. Okay, let's continue. All acts of the body or mind, or the senses or intellect, will help to purify oneself if attachment is given up. Through this knowledge renouncing works, the wise are self-controlled, content. In bodies of 9 gates they dwell, neither acting nor causing acts. The inner self is not the cause, for action or for agency, nor for the fruits of any work. These all take place naturally. Those whose ignorance of the self has been destroyed, then unto them knowledge like the dazzling sun reveals supreme reality. They discern the very same self in a learned and cultured priest, or in a cow or elephant, or a dog or a dog-eater, not rejoicing when pleasures come, nor cowering in woeful times, with minds unclouded and steadfast. Knowers of God abide in God, such sages purified of sin, self-controlled, unfettered by doubts, rejoicing in the good of all, they attain utmost peace in God. You saw a transition where he finished his topic of jnana karma sannyasa and then moved on to talk about knowledge. Knowledge that enlightens you, knowledge that is a goal of spiritual life. So chapters have a title, but that title doesn't necessarily represent all of the topics in the chapter, just maybe the prevalent topic. That brings us to chapter 6. We'll just see the first couple of verses of chapter 6, which surprisingly, chapter 6 is dhyana yoga, meditation. Look at the first verse. Those who fulfill their duties here, not impelled by the fruits of works, such yogis are renunciates, not those who merely forsake deeds. It's the same topic we just talked about. This is karma yoga and all 5 kinds of sannyasa. What's going on here? It turns out that the first 10 verses of chapter 6, even though chapter 6 is called Dhyana Yoga, the first 10 verses are carried over from the prior topic. So this is an example of how division between chapters in the Mahabharata is sometimes arbitrary, not often, but sometimes arbitrary. Here we find an arbitrary division. If you wanted to be a better editor, by the way, Vyasa didn't have an editor. If he had a major publishing house who was publishing his works, he would have had a whole staff of editors. Anyway, you get my point. This is just how the scriptures come to us, a little bit ragged at the edges, and we have to be ready for that. So, the opening verses of chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, deal with the same topics found in chapters 3, 4, and 5. Karma Yoga and the relationship to various kinds of renunciation. We'll just see that opening passage, and then we'll stop, and then when we meet next time, then we'll start with the meditation portion. Okay, let's see this opening part. And you'll see exactly what we've been talking about, Karma Yoga and these 5 kinds of renunciation. It all continues here. The Blessed Lord said, those who fulfill their duties here, not impelled by the fruits of work, such yogis are renunciates, not those who merely forsake deeds when they are no longer attached to objects or experience, giving up all other pursuits. In yoga they have mastery, a yogi whose mind is fulfilled, By this wisdom, by knowing God, looks the same way on everyone. Enemies, friends, sinners, and saints. We'll pause here. Do you see the renunciation of agenda? Looks the same. Why is it that some people are for you, there are some people in the category of friends, hopefully that's the largest category. There are a few people in the category of enemy, hopefully very few, and there are a great number of people in the middle who are neither friends nor enemies. Why do you categorize people like that? You have an agenda. When you outgrow that agenda, all of that categorization goes away. And this is where the topic of karma yoga finally ends here. So it started way back in chapter 2, verse 47, actually before that even, and then a little bit of chapter 2, most of chapter 3, half of chapter 4, and most of chapter 5, all, and even this beginning part of chapter 6, all connected to karma yoga, which is why the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are said to primarily deal with the topic of karma yoga. When we meet next week, we will continue now with this topic of meditation, and then we'll move on into chapters 7 and 8 and 9, which very big change of orientation. We'll discuss it then. A brief announcement. Sunday, tomorrow at 6 p.m., we have satsang, and we've been sitting out in the picnic area. The weather is delightful this time of year. You will really enjoy it. If not for the satsang, just to sit out and enjoy the evening. So come and join us at 6 p.m. for satsang, and we'll conclude with our brief prayers at the altar. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Havamahe Kaving Gavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspataha Nashranvan Utabasira Saranam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kam Sachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschad Dukkha Bhagvavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritangamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat.